Welcome everybody to this Zoom masterclass on getting to know your menstrual cycle. I am so excited to have you guys here. Just so that you guys know, for anyone who is watching this in the replay, this is a recorded live and I have some beautiful guests who are here with me, so they will be able to ask some questions at the end. And if you have questions and you are watching the replay, you can always reach out to me on Instagram at Leslie Draffin. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. I think we'll get started. Okay, so this is Get to Know Your Menstrual Cycle. I am Leslie Draffin. I'm so excited to have you guys here. And I thought the first thing I would do is introduce myself. So my name's Leslie. I am a menstrual cycle coach. I'm a podcast host. I have my own podcast called The Light Within, and I am also a journalist. And I felt called to this work specifically for a couple of reasons. One is that I grew up in the church. My dad was a preacher, and my mom had had a hysterectomy before I was born. So my sister and I were adopted, and we never were around women who were bleeding. So it was even more taboo and hidden than I think it might be in some other families, because it was just no adult was there having those experiences. And I had my first bleed at 11, and I tell this story just all over the place, so it's not a secret. I had it at 11, and then I didn't have a period for 6 months, which is totally normal, but no one told me that it was normal. So I, in my little 11-year-old brain, concocted this idea that I must have been pregnant. I must have gotten pregnant somehow. And despite the fact that I had never held hands with a boy or kissed a boy, I just knew that the reason my period was not coming was that I was pregnant. And the reason I somehow thought that had happened was I used my dad's towel on a beach vacation. And so that was fear instilled in my young body from a very young age that just trickled in for years and years and years. I went on the pill at 18, still terrified of ever falling pregnant. I was on the pill for, I think, 15 or 16 years. And when I came off of hormonal birth control in 2020, after my husband got a vasectomy because we were child-free by choice, I finally had the ability to learn what was going on in my body, and all hell kind of broke loose. I started experiencing hair loss, massive mood swings, hormonal acne around my chin and mouth. I have scars from that now. I'm a news anchor as well, so having that break out when that's what everyone sees front facing was certainly terrifying for me. And I also just, was so lost. I had no idea what was going on with my body. I remembered a little bit learning of what was going on with the menstrual cycle as a kid, but from what my experience was, it was an abstinence-based learning model that really instilled even more fear. It wasn't something that made sense to me. I remember hearing these big, big words, and it did not compute. And so in the year and a half after I went off of the pill, I spent thousands of dollars on courses, reading dozens of books, working with a personal trainer, working with 2 dietitians, getting lab after lab done, to finally get a PCOS diagnosis. And then I was just kind of left to myself. I didn't really have a guide or anyone to help me. And so that was kind of something that I wanted to be for others, as a guide, a support system, and someone who could help them through those transitions, because I did feel so alone. I had a really great doctor who was super helpful, but other than that, it was kind of just me doing my own thing. So let's go over a little bit about what we're going to talk about in this masterclass. So we are going to talk about the basics of your cycle, the 4 inner seasons of your cycle, or the 4 phases of your cycle, hormonal changes that happen throughout your cycle. We're going to talk about cycle tracking, how to track if you do not have a period, and why you might want to track even without a period. We'll talk about some of the benefits of cycle tracking and what I call cyclical living. We are also going to go over, I think it's 4 common cycle signs, things like acne and cramps. And I'll have some suggestions to help you alleviate those common cycle signs. So just so that we are all on the same page, that is what you guys are going to be experiencing throughout this. And let's get started. So first things first, what happens in our bodies when we have our period? A lot of people think of the menstrual cycle as only the days that you bleed. It is, in fact, any day of your life during a woman's reproductive years. So the first thing I had to get out of my mind was saying the word period for the entire menstrual cycle. I try to, as much as possible, call it the menstrual cycle because that is, in fact, what it is. It's 4 phases. The 4 phases are follicular, ovulation, luteal, and menstruation. We will call them, and the way I like to teach them and the way I wish I had been taught them as a child, inner spring, inner summer, inner fall, inner winter. And I think that that would have made so much more sense to me as a kid because of the fact that I understand the seasons. A lot of us understand the seasons, right? But when I was hearing those medical terms in 5th grade in the reproductive class they sat us down in, follicular, luteal, they didn't make sense to me. So that is how I teach it as a season. It's also really important, and Teresa, I know you kind of mentioned this before, that learning about the different hormones is so important throughout your cycle so that you don't get surprised. And so that when you feel different, day 1 to day 2, you understand that that's completely normal. The difference between people in male bodies and people in female bodies, womb holders, is that those in male bodies are always kind of stagnant with their hormones. They go up and they go down throughout a 24-hour cycle, but it's pretty much the same thing every day. For those of us in female bodies, womb holders, it's a roller coaster. And if you know how to ride that ride, then you're going to have a great time. So when you feel different week to week, day to day, that is totally normal. And when you learn to track your cycle and sync with your cycle, you will have so much more control and feel empowered by the things happening in your body versus scared and ashamed and freaked out. So first things first on this basics level. Day 1, Teresa, this is for you. Day 1 of your bleed is day 1 of your cycle. So when you start cycle tracking, you think, I'm going to start counting from the day 1 of my period, my bleed. And then you count all the way through the month until the next first day of your bleed. And then again, that will be day 1 of your next cycle. Average cycle lengths, I hesitated to even put it in this presentation because I feel like they're, I don't know how to feel about it. The average is whatever's average for you. A lot of the doctors out there and the hormones experts and specialists will say 21 to 35 days. That's kind of the normal range. But I say whatever's normal for you and whichever is not fluctuating drastically. So if you are going from a 30-day cycle to a 31-day cycle to a 29-day cycle to a 30-day cycle, that's great. If you're going from a 25 to a 35 to a 26 to a 33, and you're having a lot of fluctuations back and forth, those are things you're going to want to take note of and yeah, just take good notes on because it might be a signal of something more going on in your body. I do like to point out though, that the 28-day cycle is also roughly the time it takes the moon to travel through its phases. I'm very into the moon, love the moon, and I love how much the moon and menstruation go hand in hand. And so I just think that's very cool. And there's also a lot of evidence to show that pre-industrial ages, when we were living, still in the tribes, women did menstruate along with the moon. They would bleed with the new moon and ovulate with the full moon. I like to believe it was because at the full moon, it's bright outside. So there's a lot more room to get busy, or light to get busy. You could see to do what you're doing. And so I think that's most likely why they were menstruating on that cycle. Again, the only thing you need to know and what's important is to know what is normal and average for you. And also remember that it takes 3 to 4 months of positive changes, of cycle syncing, of tracking your cycle to get enough data to know what's really going on and to make any positive impacts. It's kind of one of those things where if you're going to the gym, we know if we go to the gym one day, it's not going to make a big difference. It's what you do every single day over weeks, over months, that will ultimately make the best changes in your life. And so that's the same for menstrual health and for cycle syncing. All right, this is the part where if you want to screenshot this or if you want me to send this information to you later, I absolutely will. There are 4 main hormones happening in your menstrual cycle. These are the ones that are the heavy hitters when it comes to the hormonal roller coaster that I was mentioning before. FSH, LH, estrogen, and progesterone. And I'm going to flip back and forth between 2 slides. You guys can get a look at it. Here are some squiggly lines for you guys to take a look at. And what I want you to check is this hormone level about 2/3 of the way down your screen. So I'll use my pointer. FSH, LH, estrogen, and progesterone. This is day 1 of your bleed. And like we said before, we know that's when we are bleeding. So you're in a bleed, let's say you bleed 3 to 5 days. This is all these hormones right here. They're very low. They're at their lowest point, some of them, for the whole cycle. You can tell blue and pink, FSH and LH, they're doing some stuff. They're kind of getting ready to start working. But purple, which is progesterone, is at its lowest, and estrogen, which is in gray, it's kind of low as well. So FSH, which again is this blue, that is the follicle stimulating hormone. It is made by your pituitary gland in your brain. It starts rising in your bleed. So day 2 to day 4, it'll start rising. It is what tells your ovaries to start developing the egg. Your brain talks to your ovaries, and that's what tells them, hey, it's time to get started. It's time to go to work. It also stimulates estrogen production in the ovaries. And as you'll see here, the little blue line has a little tiny spike right before we ovulate. The next is LH, or luteinizing hormone. It is also made by the pituitary, I should say it's here. Your pituitary is behind your third eye, okay? Pituitary gland is here in the brain. It talks to the ovaries. It also starts rising right during the bleed. Let's go over and check. It is the pink. So it is, oh man, me and technology, where am I? Here we are. The pink here is a little higher, and it is rising again during the bleed. Luteinizing hormone is what helps the egg grow. It's the stimulator. It's also what tells the egg to release from the follicle. So when you look back at this chart, below the squiggly lines here at the bottom, where my pointer is, that is the ovarian cycle. So you can also see this is a follicle. As you're in day 2 to day 5 of your period, it's just chilling. Nothing really is happening. Day 7-ish, day 8, you can see it starts to change. You'll notice above what's happening with these hormones. As it gets closer to ovulation and estrogen really starts coming in, see the change? It's really looking like it's about to pop right out. And so that's what LH is doing. It is telling that follicle to stimulate the egg. Egg's getting ready to go on its journey. And then it also helps the follicle absorb back into the body after the egg is released. The third main heavy hitter in the hormone cycle, and it's probably one everybody has heard of, is estrogen. Estrogen here is in the gray line. You can see it has a huge upswing right during ovulation. It'll dip, and then it also has a secondary upswing in the middle of your inner fall. Estrogen is produced by the ovaries. So this is the first one that's produced in the actual womb. Brain is for the first 2, LH, FSH in your pituitary gland, and then ovaries, adrenal glands, and your fat cells all help produce estrogen. This is what helps speed up or slow down how fast the egg is developing in the follicle. It's also what starts to tell your uterine lining to grow. We look over here, you can see that it starts to grow really in the inner spring phase. Inner summer is here where it has the big spike, and then inner fall or luteal is over here. So it's telling your uterine lining to get ready for the egg in the event that you are to fall pregnant. It then, once the egg is released, will tell the FSH, the follicle stimulating hormone, you're done, take a chill pill, we'll see you in a couple of weeks, so that the dominant follicle will then be reabsorbed into the body after the egg is released. And something that is very interesting is estrogen also make you hungry, might make you feel hungrier. So there's some conflicting information, but in my own experience, I often feel hungrier during certain times of my cycle and not so hungry in other types of the cycle. And actually, I said that wrong. Estrogen makes you less hungry, I should say. So in the beginning of your cycle, you may feel like you're less hungry. Then right before your period, if you feel very, very hungry, if you just feel ravenous, that is because of progesterone, which is the fourth hormone in the cycle. And it is the purple, this purple line. And you can tell progesterone's not doing anything for the first couple of weeks, first week or two of your cycle. It's chilling, it's biding its time. And then it comes in like a lion in your inner fall luteal and really has that big, big hump. It's produced by the ovaries. It is what maintains the uterine lining, that plush, soft little nest for an egg to get into if the egg is fertilized. And if you become pregnant, it will stay high. If you do not become pregnant, it will fall like it does here. This is an example of someone who has not fallen pregnant. And as it falls, that is what tells the body it's time to bleed. So those four main hormones are the heavy hitters when it comes to the female reproductive system: FSH, LH, estrogen, and progesterone. And again, like I said before, if you notice estrogen in the beginning 2 weeks or so of your cycle, it may help you feel a little less hungry. And progesterone, which is really coming into play in the second 2 weeks of your cycle, or the second half, that might make you feel more hungry. And the reason I like to tell people that is because I find that a lot of people give themselves a lot of grief when they have these cravings or they're just super hungry right before their cycle. I think it is so important to know that that's your hormones telling you you need more food. So if you feel hungrier, go ahead and eat, girl. Go ahead. So let's go over the 4 seasons: inner spring, summer, winter, and fall. So inner spring is the first phase of your cycle. It lasts 7 to 10 days, depending on the length of your cycle. It happens right after you finish your period. It is when FSH, LH, and estrogen are all on the rise. And in this time, you might feel just like in spring. You are blossoming, you are growing, you are glowing, you are ready to take action. Your body might feel very energetic. You could feel a little bit leaner. For me, not someone who likes to go running, never fails. I will want to go for a run on like day 8 of my cycle when I'm just starting inner spring, because I have such a big burst of energy. Emotions, you could feel very excited, maybe playful, creative, fresh, and new. But I do always like to point out a couple of things to watch out for. And during inner spring, you want to be careful not to go too fast too soon. Because if you burn out during inner spring, you're not going to have your energy to last the rest of your cycle. The next phase of move myself up there. The next phase is inner summer. This is the shortest phase. It is also the phase associated with ovulation. It lasts between 3 and 5 days, even though ovulation is technically a 24-hour period, 24 to 48 hours, depending on the research that you look at. This is when 3 of the 4 sex hormones are at their peak. It's what gets a really great reputation as being like the time you're unstoppable, you're attractive. Just like I was saying, when the ancient women were in tribe, they were ovulating most likely with the full moon. It was time to get busy. So they were feeling themselves and everyone was feeling them too. You may feel very confident. I have put this to the test. You need to ask for a raise at work, schedule a meeting during ovulation, because your communication skills might also be heightened. but you're also going to be so magnanimous and so magnetic that people are going to want to pay you more. So you got to go on a date. If you can, plan it for inner summer. Now, like I said, there are things to watch out for. Sometimes you may feel very irritated at inner summer. I have felt that way multiple times. And what I tell people who feel that way is, what were you doing 2 weeks ago? Were you resting during your bleed? Did you go too fast out of the gate during inner spring and burn yourself out? You know, we have to think about this as a marathon that we run every single cycle. You can't just sprint right out of the gate and do all the things. You want to kind of go a little slow and steady and then gradually progress down as well. So if you feel yourself being irritated, restless, it might be a sign that you need to just take it slow, especially during your bleed, and just let things come to you a little bit easier. Emotions that you might be feeling, like I said, unstoppable, super attractive, sassy, sexy. There are a lot of brand images that I have out on my Instagram page. When did I shoot that photo shoot? During inner summer, because I was feeling myself. So me and this technology. So inner fall is the third phase. It is the longest phase, and y'all, it gets the worst reputation. It's the one where everyone says, I feel bloated, I feel tired, I feel super bitchy, and you know, it's PMS central. Personally, I love inner fall, and I think that's because of the work that I've done with cyclical living, and I understand the way you can make it work for you. But it really is what society tells us as the shadow side of ourselves. It is, you know, our teacher, Gemma Lee, just put out this post the other day, I think it was today or yesterday, talking about how this was called the witching season, because everyone's like a witch with a bee during their inner fall. No, when you cycle sync and you understand how to use diet and lifestyle changes, this might be your favorite time. It is my favorite time. Our energy in this time turns inwards, and you might not feel like you can give it all at the gym, but your brain focus might be just zeroing in on task after task after task and checking off that to-do list like it's your freaking job. I wrote this entire Zoom masterclass in my inner fall in like 2 days because I was on top of things. This is when, like we said before in that graphic, this is when your progesterone takes over and your estrogen also has another little spike. So your body could feel lethargic, and it could also feel, just, amazing, or you really could feel like you are a little bit more tired and more lethargic. I will say though, in this, if you do find yourself craving things like chocolate, just know it might be a sign that you're low in magnesium. So you're going to want to nix that craving just by grabbing something with dark chocolate to help out. And the final one is inner winter. That is when we have our bleed. It's the last phase, 3 to 7 days. Hormones are at their lowest. Emotions could be very intuitive, very reflective, but it may also be pretty withdrawn and dissatisfied. The activities I suggest during your bleed is napping. Do not do hard workouts. Nap, bathe, walk in nature. And I like to do something to honor my bleed, like wear red, or when I'm cycle tracking, write with a red pen. So let's talk about cycle tracking. At its most basic, cycle tracking is simply asking yourself every day, how do I feel physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? I also like to add in there, what would I complain about? What, I have a pimple right here. Happens for me during inner summer. What would I complain about? You can cite that on your tracker as well. You can track with an app or a paper tracker. There is a tracker for you free in the chat box. And you can also use an app. I love to use Thermometer. I've also used MyFlow. Just remember, whatever you're gonna use, an app or paper, just make sure you're trying to make this a habit every day, because that's where you'll actually get the data. If you do not have a bleed, there are many reasons why. You could be on hormonal birth control, pregnant, breastfeeding. If you have a hormonal imbalance, if you're trans and you don't actually have a period, that's totally fine. You can still cycle track and you can still reap the benefits. but you are going to want to cycle with the moon. Day 1 of your cycle is on the new moon. You would be ovulating in inner summer at the full moon. And then again, you'd be back to your bleed during the new moon. And I am interested in doing a class all on that if anyone is interested. So just let me know. There are a lot of benefits to living this way. And I think the biggest one is knowing that when I have emotions that feel big or emotions that feel really low, noticing where I am in my cycle so that I can choose to flow with them and not against them. And it can look like feeling like you need a rest and taking a rest because you know you're about to have your bleed. Or it can feel like I have a lot of restless energy. I want to go for a run. I'm in my inner summer. That is a peak time for excellent workouts. And so I go for a run. If we work with our cycle, we will accomplish far more with less effort. We'll have more energy. You can reach your health and fitness goals much faster, and you're just going to be healthier and happier overall. So the only way to really know, again, where you are in your cycle is to cycle track. You're going to get yourself a tracker, or you're going to use an app. You're going to start asking yourself how you feel. You're going to honor whatever comes up. You're not going to judge it. And then you're going to notice which days you feel great and which days you feel a little crappier. And you're just going to be okay with that. So a couple of things that are ways you can honor each season of your cycle. These are just some examples. Inner spring, try something new. Inner summer, take a dance class or go on a date or host a party. Inner fall, organize your house. I hate cleaning, but never fails. I will feel like organizing when it's in my inner fall. And also eat more if you're hungry. Eat more if you're hungry. Elisa Vitti, who is an expert in this field, says you need 250 calories more a day during the second half of your cycle. And then when you are bleeding in your inner winter, take some time alone, nap, be with yourself. So let's take a look at cycle signs. So cycle signs can occur when we experience menstrual imbalances, and they are a direct reflection of what's going on in our outer world as well. Stress is one of the biggest things that impacts our menstrual cycle. And honestly, 3 out of 4 people do express the fact that they have cycle signs. So you are not alone. If you have them, it is very possible to live a completely free, symptom-free cycle. So cycle signs, like I was saying, are often just a sign that something might not be fully in balance in our bodies. And like I mentioned, stress is the #1 problem. Last year, my dog, the love of my life, who might walk in here because now the door is open, he had to have an emergency surgery and almost died. Like, I've had this dog for 9 years. He's a Great Dane. He's like truly the love of my life. My period was delayed by 10 days because of the stress of that. I held that stress in my body. I had to do so much work to get it out, and my period was delayed 10 days. 3 out of 4 people do experience the cycle signs, so you are not alone if you do too, although it is possible to live completely symptom-free. So there are a couple of big reasons why we have them other than stress. One is genetics. So if your mom had cramps, you might have cramps. If your mom had irregular periods, so might you. Lifestyle is also a massive contributor. If you feel like you have a very stressful job and you're going through a breakup and you're not eating, a lot of healthy whole foods, you could see things pop up like acne, or you could see things pop up like bloating. The toxins, we really say it as environment. Toxins and the pandemic, again, are super stressful, and yeah, that also can deeply impact your body and your cycle signs. So another thing that can also impact it is just things like your contraceptives, medications, surgeries. All of those things can also impact your menstrual cycle. Common ways that cycle signs might show up are things like digestive issues, bloating. I know I have bloating myself. Problems sleeping. Oh, I don't know about you guys, but in the middle of my bleed, I will wake up in the middle of the night and not sleep through the whole night. I'll also have wild dreams during my bleed. And that's a cycle sign in some ways. You may also feel like you have a cold. You could have aches and sprains. You may be more likely to get injured at the gym during your bleed specifically. You may have things going on with your yoni, a UTI. Your breast may be more sore. You could have more pimples. These are kind of just some of the ways that they show up throughout the body. And if you have had any of these before, I'm sure you kind of know what I mean. So there are also some cycle signs that are more likely to pop up in certain seasons of your cycle. So winter and fall, we kind of get that. It's cravings. I feel like that's what everybody complains about. Oh man, I just really want chocolate right before your period. How many times have you said that? Like I mentioned before, if that is something that you're experiencing, it could be a sign your body needs magnesium. So you can supplement with a magnesium or grab yourself a high quality dark chocolate or some leafy greens to snack on. That can help you with the cravings. Another cycle sign that really pops up for me is, like I mentioned, in inner summer, acne. So I have a little pimple coming right here, and it happens every ovulation. It's a cycle sign that I'm well aware of, and I know kind of what's going on with that because I know when it's popping up. It is during ovulation. So the most important thing when it comes to cycle tracking is that part I told you about writing down anything you complain about. If you are just ravenous for red meat or for chocolate right before your period, make sure you're writing that in your tracker. If you have acne that pops up around your inner summer, write that in your tracker. There are also some other cycle signs like a racing mind. During spring, inner spring, I call it monkey mind. You're coming out of the low of your bleed into that first burst of energy, and you may be feeling like you got to do all the things, shoulding yourself. I always say don't should all over yourself, because when we're in inner spring, we're thinking, all right, I took a couple of days off to rest and now I've got to get all my shit done. And a lot of times that will create restlessness and a racing mind in that inner spring. And like we already talked about, you want to make sure in inner spring that you're just going slow and steady in the marathon that is your menstrual cycle. Generally, for healthy cycles, you want to make sure you're drinking clean water, that you explore your nutrition. I said explore nutrition. I come from an anti-diet background. I had 20 years of eating disorders. I am never going to tell a client to be on a diet. I'm never going to tell you how much to eat, period. It's never coming out of my mind, out of my mouth, or out of my mind. But I will say things like explore nutrition. So explore trying something new. It's perfect for your inner spring. For inner fall, a nutritional exploration might be, okay, what can I do with a sweet potato? Because I know that that is a root vegetable that's very warm and grounding. Could you explore trying to make your own food at home for a week? Could you explore using fewer ingredients or having fewer processed foods in your diet? Also, moving your body, but not moving your body too much. You want to make sure you are actively getting out there, either in walking or hiking in nature or swimming, but you also want to make sure you're not killing it at boot camp class every single day of your cycle. Over exercising in the second half of your cycle. This is from Elisa Vitti, I mentioned before. If you over exercise in the second half of your cycle, you will turn on muscle wasting and fat storage. And think of it like a hamster on a wheel. You're never getting off that wheel toward that goal, because all the good progress you made in the first couple of weeks, if you have a goal of getting in shape or losing weight, like I said, I'm not somebody who works with people who are really like that, but if that's your goal, you can make great progress in the first 2 weeks by going to those boot camp classes because your energy is high. But after ovulation, when you need more food and you need more rest, if you continue to do those super high energy workouts, you're going to turn on muscle wasting and fat storage, and you're going to end up where you started. You may not lose any weight. You may not see any changes in your body. And so making sure you have the right movement for whatever day you're on in your cycle is key. Taking care of your mental health. Maybe you're somebody who likes to meditate, which is definitely my thing, or do breath work or journaling. There are some supplements that I can suggest for anyone on their menstrual cycle. I would always suggest a good probiotic, a good quality multivitamin, fish oil, and magnesium. And if you have questions about that, I work with a company I feel very strongly about, Theralogics, and they have some excellent supplements for menstruators. Sleep. The first thing to go when we're stressed is our sleep. So make sure you're getting good quality sleep. If you are stressed, make sure you focus on that sleep routine. And then also cycle tracking, always very important to do. Now, let's get to some common cycle signs and my suggestions for it. I had a 12-year-old client who has done testimonials for me, and she would not mind me telling you this, but when we first started working together, she had pain in her cycle day 1 and 2. She told me was an 8 or a 9. And she regularly would miss school or come home from school because of how bad her cramps were. We worked together for about 7 or 8 weeks, and her pain went from an 8 or a 9 to a 5 or a 6. I just checked in with her about 2 weeks ago, and now her pain's at a 3-4, which I felt was just absolutely amazing, and I'm so happy for her. The things I suggested for her, in addition to cycle tracking, is journaling and really trying to get in tune with her inner seasons, but also limiting her dairy, her cow dairy specifically. I said you could have goat cheese if that's what you wanted. We also had her taking, she wasn't taking a magnesium supplement, but she was upping her dark leafy greens. So her mom would cook more dark leafy greens into her meals. And, it was a 12-year-old. So her mom had to work really one-on-one, hand in hand with me for her diet changes. But this girl was so dedicated to this process. She went from having yogurt a couple times a day because she loved yogurt so much to completely limiting dairy and not having yogurt anymore. And I think that's probably one of the bigger reasons why her cramps and her pain decreased considerably. The other thing is she stopped eating cold foods. Her mom called me one day and said, we went to Chick-fil-A and she told me in the drive-thru, ooh, I really want a milkshake. And she said, no. Miss Leslie said I shouldn't have cold food, so I'm not getting a milkshake today. She knew she was about to have her period. I don't think you have to totally skip cold food. If you want to have cold food, I'd have it in inner spring, right at inner summer. And if it's blazing hot outside here in Texas, like 115 degrees or whatever, certainly it's okay to have a little bit of cold food or room temperature food. So these are kind of the big suggestions I have. When it comes down to it and we think about pain, I've read studies that say 70 to 90% of people who have a period experience pain. It is a massive issue. And when we think about the idea of taking an ibuprofen every day of your cycle for however long you have a cycle, that's a lot of ibuprofen. And that could do, I would imagine, kind of some damage to your body if you're consistently just planning on taking ibuprofen for the rest of your life when you have cramps. And so trying to heal those holistically, I always find is, important. And while it might not be the most fun to really have to sit through those cramps as you're taking the 3 to 4 months to really work on your cycle, I think that 12-year-old client and another client of mine who also experienced less pain are kind of proof that when you take a holistic approach, your cramps and your pain can decrease. Acne. Hello, this is my cycle sign. First things first, you're going to want to notice when the acne happens. Is it during your period? Is it during inner summer? The other thing is you can notice where it happens. Is it around your chin and your mouth? Is it around your temples? At your temples and in your hairline is a sign of excess estrogen. Here, I believe, is more of a sign of estrogen issues as well, but definitely if you get it here. If you are breaking out near ovulation, again, the cause can be high estrogen. The way to help that, support your body's ability to break down estrogen more quickly by adding cruciferous vegetables. So in inner summer, you're eating dark leafy greens, a big old salad, put some Brussels sprouts on there and broccoli in order to help your body flush estrogen out. If you're having breakouts at your bleed, it could be because you have lower progesterone to your estrogen ratio. So you're going to do things like eat more whole foods. You can also, like I've mentioned, supplement with magnesium. You can consider supplementing with zinc, but I would talk to your doctor about that first. But the first thing I would do is eat more whole foods, take out the processed foods. And if you're breaking out at any time, look at what your sugar intake is. I have found that if I eat a bunch of sugar, then the breakouts are happening for sure. And when I take sugar out of the diet or just decrease it, the breakouts lessen. You can also look into an anti-inflammatory diet, and you can check out balancing your blood sugar. If you have questions on either of those things, reach out to me and I can walk you through it. Heavy bleeding. I had 3 or 4 women reach out to me about this recently, and I did not really have a good answer. So I did some research for this Zoom specifically. First things first, if you have heavy bleeding constitutes, I believe they've said it's like, I want to say more than a tampon an hour. It's a lot. Maybe it was 5 to 6 tampons a day. But if you feel you have heavy bleeding for your body, talk to your doctor. They can do a thyroid test. It's sometimes linked to heavy bleeding. You might want to get your iron checked as well, because if you are steadily having heavy bleeds, if you're losing a lot of blood, you may have low iron because of it. Reducing cow dairy is the number one thing that all the research I did showed can help decrease inflammation, which would then help with the bleeds, maybe lessening the bleed. Goat and sheep milk and cheese and dairy are okay. Adding turmeric to your diet or as a supplement is also suggested, and eating things like phytoestrogens to help balance your estrogen in your body, like nuts and flax seeds, may make your periods lighter as well. But again, number one, if you are bleeding extremely heavily or very long, if you're bleeding for more than 8 days, please talk to your doctor, please. Mood swings. I had these. Ooh, did I have these? The first thing I would say if you have mood swings is notice when they happen and if anything triggered it. Because let's be honest, women get called crazy. We get called like super insane or moody. And it could just be an actual legitimate reaction to something that is happening to them. Also, are you eating enough food? When I was in my years and years of eating disorder, I had the biggest mood swings because I was hungry all the time. Are you hungry? Ask yourself that question. Are you hungry? Being in a calorie deficit, especially during the second half of your cycle, like we mentioned before, when progesterone is high and your natural inclination in your body is to need more food, if you're not eating enough food, those mood swings can just tick up even more. Balancing blood sugar by eating meals that have the 3 main macros in them, protein, fat, and a good complex carb like sweet potatoes, for instance. I'm also making sure they're high in fiber to help you stay full. That can be really important. And then journaling and taking time for yourself. I love a good rage ritual. I use it with all my clients. Put on some heavy metal or whatever music makes you feel just super, super emotional, and scream it out. And if you do feel like mood swings are something that you're experiencing, there are a host of other biological things that might be leading to those mood swings. Dr. Laura Bryden, who wrote the Period Repair Manual, is one of the Bibles, I swear on, for menstrual education. She has a ton of information on those things. So that kind of brings me to the end of this Zoom call. Thank you guys so much for being so accepting of the little technical issue. You're the best. I do have several ways that we can work together. The first easiest way is if you are at all confused, jump on a 20-minute call with me. It's free. I can go over any of these things with you. I've got free cycle trackers, a tracking checklist, a free ebook on menstrual rituals. I also have a womb meditation. I'm a meditation and mindfulness coach, or trained as a teacher. And then I am coming out with 2 group coaching offers in the spring to early summer, one specifically on period pain and the other on cyclical living. And these will be a hybrid group coaching style Q&A type meeting a couple times a month and work at your own pace courses. And so now I will stop sharing my screen and let you guys ask questions. Please, please. Ask anything. If you want to come off of if you want your video on, go for it. So do you guys have any questions at all?
I don't have any questions. I just, I love all the information. I don't know, the way you speak about the menstrual cycle and supporting it feels really compassionate to the body, and it made me emotional at times so that I, could track in a way and be compassionate, yeah, towards my body. So thank you.
Oh, I love that. I'm so excited. Yeah, I think learning to live in alignment with my menstrual cycle was the biggest act of self-care I could have ever done. And it's not all like bubble baths and painting your nails. Like sometimes it really is sitting with feelings that feel awful. But I know you had wanted some to ask a little bit or wanted to learn about about cycle tracking. Did I
Mhm.
answer all those questions for you about cycle tracking?
Um, yes. Yeah, I'll probably have some as I start actually doing it. But yeah, just asking the like how I feel emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically, and what I would complain about, that's a very helpful starting point. Because it's not just when I bleed and then when I'm not. Yeah.
Exactly. And there are some other little tips and tricks I can work on. If you want to jump on a Zoom call, we can talk about all of this when you get to tracking. There are some other little tips and tricks I have as well to just like remember to do it and all of that good stuff. Lori,
Okay.
you are a gem. Thank you so much for jumping on. I don't know if you have any questions. Lori is a blast. She was in our class.
No,
Hi.
no, I think you did a fantastic job, and I am here to support you. It was great. I think it was wonderful, Leslie. So
Thanks,
thank
Lori.
you. You're
Guys.
welcome. You're beautiful inside and out, and God bless you.